the originals, episode 10, The Casket Girls. Now, after the mid-season finale, one of the biggest things about the originals was the fact that everyone's kind of, split up in their own sections. Davina's kind of separated while, Klaus, although he technically has control, over the vampires and he is technically working, with Marcel, they're still split up because obviously, Marcel mentioned how he had all these problems, and it was obvious that he did. He was working with Rebecca, but eventually, he had to kind of succumb to Klaus's wit because Klaus was just, destroying people left and right. So he had to work with him, and he killed off the council, and Marcel at first was like, I know you took over, but you have to let me do things my own way. And of course, he was putting on a show like obviously, he didn't care or anything, and then when all the vampires got killed because Klaus kind of threatened the human council, Marcel snapped because that's the one big thing that he has is he doesn't want his vampires killed off. So when that happened, he destroys the human council, he loses it, and him and Klaus kind of end up teaming up. And then at the end of that episode, Elijah comes in and kills off the witch Agnes, who was like the protagonist to, or antagonist really, for all these random things that happen, and then they all kind of bonded just through this random rage, and now it seems as if they're kind of working together, and Rebecca sees that and she's like, well, it's kind of a boys club now, and they're just taking over New Orleans. Marcel is under Klaus, and he kind of betrayed me again. Marcel always goes to Klaus over Rebecca, and she feels kind of left out, and she realizes Davina being the most powerful person and the one that both the vampires and the witches want, she's the one to really protect. And Rebecca, she takes the chance to show like, hey, I might be blood with this guy, but I am not this guy. And she shows how different she is from Klaus and even Marcel and Elijah, who all kind of get wrapped up in the same thing with trying to find Davina. And she feels that none of them actually did anything to protect her. And obviously Klaus the whole time didn't really try to hide anything or anything like that. He just flat out was Klaus. But Marcel, she felt betrayed by him, and she mentioned how she loved him and stuff like that. And Elijah, the same thing, where he made it seem as though he was trying to actually help her, and I'm sure he was. Obviously, that very first spell when he wanted her to do like the unbinding spell, it was clearly so that he could save Haley. But he, although he has his own motives, just like Klaus and Marcel, he's not really trying to gain anything. It's just that certain characters don't know every single aspect. Like if she'd seen the fact that the only reason he kind of lost it and killed the witches was because they attacked Haley and his soon-to-be niece. At least I believe Haley's having a girl, if I remember right. She knew that she probably wouldn't have the same reaction to him kind of tricking her with the original spell, and she would realize, he is the honorable one because he's really trying to help this girl that he cares about, who's, bringing in a new member of his family. But in her, Davina's own context is just she was being manipulated and tricked over and over again, and she was angry, and so she kind of took them out temporarily, of course, but she took them out. And then we get the end of the episode where Rebecca's like, hey, I brought your friend, I didn't kill him off, and I want you to see how Marcel really is too, and how even though Klaus is horrible, Marcel did learn from him. And when he decides he's tired of one of his vampires, even his best friend who was the second in command for decades, he'll just toss him into this pit and just leave him to starve. And so she really gives Davina more information to see just how deep things really go for Marcel and Klaus as far as what they do when they get angry. And it was really great to see that, where the scene where she ends up getting tricked because of course Klaus being Klaus, he has all these random plans that you don't expect, and he poisons the water and he kills Tim, I believe the guy's name was, and he kills Davina as well. But earlier in the episode you see Marcel and Elijah do have these moments where they talk. They of course don't say what they talk about, but they're not with Klaus and they're kind of whispering a little bit. And we find out in the end of the episode that after Davina killed the witches that came after her, Marcel found out, and he went and talked to her and said, if you help me protect this witch, obviously who I'm talking about, that would really help me out, and I'd appreciate that. And, we can kind of work together in a certain way, and stop Klaus pretty much. So Davina does end up getting protected, which was really cool. I thought that was a great, little moment in the episode where she does end up getting saved. But of course, the guy that she fell in love with, or was infatuated with, he doesn't survive. He does end up dying. So of course, she has that rage, and she really does want revenge. And of course, she's back in the house, but she wants revenge on the people who did that. Mainly Klaus, because of course, all of this is really because of Klaus. If there has to be one specific person, it's him. But she's gonna be mad at Marcel for obviously not telling her about the witches being killed off, because that was really the only reason she had to stay in the attic, or in the house really, was because of the witches. But she does still have to be careful because obviously the witches came after her in this episode when she was by herself. So they are still going full force trying to find things out. And of course, Haley is working with Sophie, and Sophie is looking for Elijah's, ex girlfriend who died, who was a witch. And when she finds her body in the end of this episode, and they reveal that these crazy random drawings that Davina did, which were like evil drawings, they make a giant picture of, Elijah's girlfriend. Of course, I can't remember her name, but it makes a giant picture of her. So I'm wondering what will exactly happen to Sophie if, she'll take her power and basically just be taken over, or if somehow she, will activate this witch's body and she'll really just come back to life. So I'm really curious to see how that plays out, if Sophie gets taken over, or if she just ends up, bringing her back to life in some crazy way that, she obviously wasn't even trying to do. But she's trying to gain more power, and it's not going to work, and something, just really bad is going to happen. And I was glad they did that, because it just shows how they continue to make up these new things in the show, and it's kind of like they have so much stuff happen in such a short span of time. That's kind of what makes the show amazing. Like, they finish arcs in like a couple of episodes where you think this could have been like the entire season, and then they just finish it in like, and 1 or 2 episodes, and then it's like right at the end of the episode, it's like, we finish that, and it leads right into this next thing that is happening at the exact same time. So, in this case, it was one of the best moments where they did that, where, they led into what the next crazy thing was going to be. And it's not just, oh, she's going to, Sophie's going to dig up her body and get her powers. It's that she's some crazy evil, powerful spirit that Davina's been seeing, in bits and pieces, that, when you put the picture together, it makes her face. And, it makes it a lot more impactful than just Sophie's going to have more power. It's Sophie, is going to have more power, or, like I said, this witch could come back to life. And obviously, if Davina's having, these crazy images of her, and it's not just this set picture, it's something big. Like whenever a witch does magic, you notice how she draws one picture for that. This was, I think, maybe 10 or 12 different pictures that made, her face. So if that is an actual, examination of how powerful she is, then, who knows what could happen when she comes back to life, or, comes into play however she does. But I'm really excited to see that. And obviously, Haley's working with Sophie, because Sophie's line is the one that cursed Haley's family. So if things don't work out, where Sophie doesn't end up getting killed off, which I highly doubt she will, then maybe we will get to see Haley's family come in, and they won't be trapped in wolf form. But I think if we do get that, which I feel like we really will, that won't really be until maybe season 2, and they'll kind of bring Tyler back into that, because obviously the whole werewolf vampire thing. So I'm excited to see how that plays out. But I'm definitely excited for next week's episode. I did get to see the promo, because I'm actually had to watch this online, which is why I'm doing it so late. But the promo for next week, it makes perfect sense. At some point, having so much power does overwhelm someone's body, and it, we have to see what happens with Davina. I'm sure she won't die. They're gonna figure something out. I, of course, have no idea what it could possibly be, outside of, if the witch does come back, maybe somehow she, like I said, if she takes over Sophie's body, and somehow manages to get into, the house and gets close to Davina, maybe she'll be the one to take all that power from her. But they're trying to basically complete the harvest, and that's, if you watch the preview, that's really what it was. And obviously Marcel's protecting her because he does care, but you know, like Klaus, one of the lines he says is, I didn't come back, or I didn't take over New Orleans just to see it destroyed. So we have to see how that plays out. I'm sure she won't end up getting killed, so maybe the witch will somehow like siphon the power off. I have no idea how, but I feel like that's probably how it's gonna go. But either way, I'm really excited for that, and also Cammy, um, knowing, pretty much everything now. She remembers everything, and she threatened, Klaus at the end of this episode, who in this episode he lost. It was kind of cool. It was great to see his plan kind of come into action. Him doing his crazy thing where it's like, I tried to talk to you, but you wanted to kill us off, so I poisoned you. But he did lose ultimately because Elijah and Marcel, mostly Elijah, knew as much as he has that redemption in him, I have to make sure I don't let anyone else get killed. So he lost in the end. And when Cammy came up to him, was like, I remember everything, and if you hurt Davina, or I guess Tim was the vampire actually, but if you hurt them, then I'll reveal you to everyone. And he does actually kind of care about her, but I think at the same time, him having really lost, it just affected him more that she kind of just really hates him, and there's nothing he can do about it anymore. So excited for next week's episode for sure with the main story, but whatever the side story ends up being, which I feel like it might be Cammy, just because we didn't get as much of that as I thought we would. It was kind of her, she talked to her uncle a little bit. She learned that her uncle obviously knew everything, and she threatened Klaus. But I feel like she's got some ideas. I mean, she took all those notes, did all that research. I feel like she has some plan, and it might be a little bit more than just, I'm gonna hold this material that I found until he does something that makes me angry. So I'm excited to see what she does too. But comment below, let me know what you guys thought of this episode. Favorite parts, least favorite parts, and with you know the ending that we had in this episode, how do you guys think Elijah's ex-girlfriend is gonna really come into play in this series? What do you think's gonna happen with her? What do you think her role is really gonna be if she really is this dark, presence that Davina's been seeing? But comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.